Happy Wednesday, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Welcome to Soulibration. I'm your host, Shameika Rhymes. It seems like the week goes by so fast, doesn't it? Well, anyway, let me know where you are watching from and how you're doing. And I also want to know, do you feel overwhelmed, stressed out, just completely drained, whether it's physically, emotionally, or all the things like you really just cannot absolutely cannot add another thing to your plate. Like if somebody says, "Can you do this?" You just can't even say yes, no. You're just like, I can't. I don't know if you've ever felt like that or if you're feeling like that now. Let me know in the comments. And remember to share this with your network. And if you have any questions throughout tonight's show, make sure you drop that in the chat because I love when you guys are dropping those questions. So I'm super excited about tonight's show because tonight we're going to take a look into the crucial topic of burnout, which is kind of a little bit of what I described, but we're going to get into it, like dive deep into it. But we're going to look at burnout, the recovery, into how to prevent it, because that's the key right there, prevention. And so joining me tonight is Lisan Basquiat, CEO of Shaping Freedom, and she's bringing her expertise and compassionate insights to help us understand the signs of burnout, strategy for prevention, and effective methods for recovery. So, whether you're just trying to get that overwhelmness under control or you're trying to figure out how do I balance everything, she's going to share some valuable advice. And let me tell you a little bit about her. So, Lisan she's board certified by the Association of Integrative Psychology, and she's a master practitioner of mental and emotional release therapy, a master Reiki practitioner, an accredited energy leadership coach, and the founder of the personal growth company Shaping Freedom. And she's also been a certified coach since 2004. So let's bring Lisan on. Hi, welcome to
Hello.
Celebration.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me, Shameika. I appreciate it. I'm excited for this conversation.
Me too. As I was just rambling on about being burnt out, I started to have a little flashback like, oh, yes, all the things that I'm sitting here saying. But I wanted to let you tell us, what is burnout? What exactly is it?
Burnout is what you feel when you've pushed yourself further than you actually can go. I mean, that's the bottom line of it. It's
Yeah.
it's it's what you feel after a lot of times we can experience the symptoms of burnout when we are maybe overdoing it,
Mm,
working on, I know myself, and I practice this, and I work with people on it. At the beginning of this year, I went through a period where I had worked on a very significant project and had several different projects going at the same time. I was overextended. I was
mhm.
back to back meetings every single day, traveling constantly,
Yeah.
bouncing from one time zone to the other. And when I got into the beginning of this year, my big plan was, I'm going to rest. And if I just like sleep in a couple of weekends, I'll be
Yeah.
fine. And the truth of the matter was the reality check that what I had put my body, my system, my life through
Mhm,
required way more than just kind of sleeping in on a Saturday. It
mhm,
was something where I really needed to pour back into myself. So, burnout is what happens whenever
mhm.
we are finding ourselves in a place where we're doing way more than we can effectively and in a healthy way sustain over time.
Yeah, I always say I'm always team doing way too much and not knowing when to say no. It's just like you just
Yeah,
keep you're like, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And you keep piling that plate up full of stuff until
yeah,
like for me, and I don't know, well, you did mention like the physical part until you just physically crash, like you can't
yeah,
do it anymore, or you just start to have for me, it was well, we'll talk about the symptoms, but for me, it was just kind
yeah.
of this just feeling overwhelmed all the time, this sense of anxiety of this, I don't know, I just don't want to do it.
Right,
You can't
right,
get
right. And
physically
and
brain
yeah,
space.
and it's not just the physical, it's
Yeah.
certainly the physical, right? Because if you're traveling or if you're just
Mhm.
like grueling and going at it all the
Mhm.
time, or if you're a new parent
Oh yeah.
and you're doing more than you're accustomed to doing, there's the physical aspects of it, but the
Mhm.
emotional and mental aspects of it, Shamika, are also
Mhm.
incredibly important. I know
Mhm.
for me and for those that I've worked with who have encountered burnout, it's decision fatigue that you can
Yes.
sometimes have,
Mhm.
where like if you ever find yourself in a place where you're just like, I can't make one more decision, don't
Mhm.
ask me what's for dinner because I
Yeah.
don't know, I can't,
Mhm.
kind of pull it together for that. And I think it's really important to recognize where
Mhm.
you are and find ways to bring yourself back to being centered and balanced. But it's a real thing.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that I say that again,
Yes.
because I think so many of us really underestimate
Mhm.
what happens to us when we continue to barrel forward and through things way
Yeah.
longer than we know we're truly capable of doing.
Totally agree. So how is it that burnout is different from just regular old stress and just fatigue? Or is there a difference? Is it kind of just all fall under the same umbrella?
Well, I think it's all about the stages, right? It's like where
Okay.
you are. Like you can have a particularly grueling and long week,
Mhm.
right? And so at the end of that week, you may feel more fatigued than
Right.
you feel at other times. Are
Mhm.
you burnt out? Probably not. Could you be on the road to burnout? Maybe. So I think the difference is the behaviors are the same, but
Mhm.
where are you on that journey to burnout? And the goal is really to keep yourself away from getting to the point where you're completely burned out. And again, it's there's
Yeah.
a spectrum, for, for lack of a better word, where complete and total burnout
Mhm.
is what happens when you are completely out of it. Like you are completely mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted.
Mhm.
You're going to your doctor to kind of figure it out.
Mhm.
Your continual pushing of yourself has now created and manifested other issues in your life. That's kind of
Mhm.
the pendulum swinging in that direction.
Yeah.
Earlier, what you want to do is you want to take a look at, where am I? Am I starting to change my lifestyle
Mm.
because I'm working on this thing? Am I uh, um, questioning my values? Have I know that family is very important to me. Have I
Mhm.
started to deprioritize things that I know are really important in my life for
Mhm.
this thing that I'm working toward? So it's really it's a spectrum of things. It's a
Okay.
road for sure.
Okay. So that kind of, well, it kind of goes along with the next question that I had about common signs and symptoms that they should be
Mhm.
aware of. Like you mentioned some of those things that they should be taking a look at. But when it comes to, like, physically, are there any things they should be looking for? I mean, for me, it was just I started to notice, and I feel like sometimes I'm a strange bird, but I started
We're
to
all
notice
strange
because
birds.
I had, I only just recently found out it was high cortisol because I was so
Mm,
stressed out from it, but it was just a dark patch on my cheek.
yeah,
And the doctor just, went to the dermatologist. She just brushed it off. But as it was bothering me, like, what is this? But as I have pulled back on my stress load and started to come down off that burnout road,
hmm
it just vanished. So,
yeah.
acne, of course, but is there anything else that,
I
maybe
think
not
anything that you're doing to neglect yourself,
okay.
whatever that looks like. I know people that I speak to all the time who say things like, I really know that I need to go to the doctor, but
Mhm.
I'm not going to, I don't have time for that.
Mm,
So a lot
yeah.
of times it's the language that we're using throughout the day. So if you hear yourself saying things like, I don't have time for that, about something that you know is part of your care for yourself, that's a sign.
Okay.
If you find that your immune system is lower and that you're kind of catching that cold, or you're finding that you're susceptible to things that normally you would not be
Hmm.
susceptible to, you're not sleeping, and
Hmm.
so therefore you're really tired and fatigued throughout the day. If you find that you are not taking the time to do the things that normally that you would do under other circumstances, like connecting with friends and family, or I don't know, that if you're a bike rider and you're not doing that, those
Hmm.
are all things that those are all feedback to let you know
Mhm.
that you could start to kind of course correct and come back to pay. Those are things to pay attention to. And yes,
Mhm.
sometimes it manifests physically where
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I'm breaking out. And I know that
Mhm.
that's a response to stress, or my hair
Yeah.
is falling out, and those kind of things. And unfortunately, what happens a lot of the times is that we run to take care of that symptom
Mhm.
without paying attention to the root cause of the situation. Some illnesses and things are just things, but
Mhm.
sometimes, more often than not, it's a sign of something deeper that we really need to take a look at.
That makes so much sense. But what happens when you do, decide, okay, this has gone on long enough. I need to go see
Yeah,
a doctor because XYZ is happening and I don't know what's causing it, even though in the back of your mind, you know what's causing it, but you
of course
decide,
you do.
let me go see,
Yeah,
let me go see what's
yeah.
causing it.
Hmm.
And that doctor just kind of throws prescriptions at you and the problem is still not solved.
Yeah.
What happens then? What do you do?
I think that what happens before that is that we really have to, I encourage people to take responsibility and accountability for
Mm,
your own well being. So,
yeah.
what that means is go to your doctor, your medical doctor, or a healthcare professional when you're feeling things that you know need to be addressed by some kind of a medical professional. Before you get there, pay attention to
Mhm.
what you know is happening at the core of that situation. So again, put the band-aid on, get the iodine for the cut, do all of those things,
Right.
and be willing to take accountability for your own well-being and address the things that are beneath it that are driving these other symptoms. Sometimes we want to save time by not dealing with something, not dealing with that tooth that's bothering
Yeah.
us, or that leg that's that's hurting, or whatever the thing is,
Mhm.
and we think that we're saving time when in fact you're going to wind up
Mhm.
um, in a way worse place and spending a lot more time having to deal with the thing that you've neglected.
That's very true as I look at my knee brace laying in the floor that should be on my knee.
Okay. And there's no perfection, right? I do this. I talk to people about this all the time. I know about burnout. I have been there. I have been burnt out. I have, been on that road to burnout. So
Mhm.
it's not something that I myself have never experienced. The
Mhm.
goal is just to be aware of yourself, to pay
Mhm.
attention to how you're walking the planet, and to understand that there is a road. And if you find yourself on that road, start to find ways to move yourself back so that you're not on that road.
So what are some primary causes of burnout? Like we've mentioned, just some other stressors, but what are some specific examples that people make because they may not realize that they're on that road to burnout. They may think it's just regular old stress. Are there
Yeah,
any specific things that could be adding to that burnout?
absolutely. It's a lot of times it starts with a very positive intention. So if you think about someone who maybe starts a new job,
Mhm.
okay, they have this new job, they're feeling excited about this new role, and they're walking into something that they've not done before.
Mm.
Great place to be, right? It's exciting. I know me, I
Yeah.
get very excited about new projects. Okay. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
yay, great. And so you start heading down that road of learning about this thing or aspiring to something. You're working towards something.
Mhm.
Then you get to a place where you're like, okay, I don't know all of the rules of this game. So I'm going to work harder, right? I'm just going to continue, maybe I normally leave at 4, now I'm going to leave at 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or whatever that it is. You start to work even harder. And then you get to a place where you start to neglect yourself,
Mhm.
meaning if you're now deciding that you're going to work harder and you're putting everything else on the back burner in order to pursue this thing, that is a time for you to take a step back and think about how you're pursuing this very positive thing: new
Mhm.
job, new project, new child, new relationship, like whatever this thing I would hope you don't burn out from relationships. So let's scratch that. If you're
Can
burning out from
happen.
relationships, That's a whole other conversation, and you want to check that too. But it's really, it starts with most of the time, a very positive thing. In
Mhm,
my example that I shared with you earlier, I was working on this project, and it was this amazing project. It was
mhm.
beautiful, and it started off with, "We're going to do this thing," and then it went
Mhm.
to, "It's going to require that we're on back-to-back meetings all day long."
Yeah.
Right? And this was a new project. This was something that I'd never done before. So now
Mhm.
I'm going to work harder. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to figure it out. Again, nothing wrong with that. The issue is when you start to do these things and you begin to
Yeah.
neglect those things that you know are a priority in your life.
Well, that brings to mind the whole, the hustle and grind culture, because everybody's like,
Yeah.
you gotta hustle, hustle. You can sleep when you're dead. That whole thing. Can you explain why that's not the move? Because I think a lot of people get sucked into because that's what's on social media. That's what we
Hmm.
should be doing, or that's what maybe some influencers are saying. This is how I
Yeah.
got from here to here,
Yeah.
and people think they have to do that same thing.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that that is what we're learning from social media and folks who say things like, "You just pull yourself up by you do what you got to do," and
Yeah.
you have the flu. Don't let anything stop you. Get
Mhm,
yourself on on those meetings and do your word is the only thing. And so if you
mhm,
say you're going to do something short of dying, you'd better do it. I think that that is a cruel
mhm.
way of managing and taking care of this being that is yourself.
Yeah.
I think that this idea that you ignore everything else that's going on around you and become inhuman in order to accomplish things is a mistake, because burnout is not just about you. A lot of times when we're in it, we're focused on how it's affecting us physically, mentally, emotionally.
Mhm,
But the truth of the matter is that it is also impacting the people that are around you, whether it be your friends, your colleagues, your children, your parents. The other areas of your life are impacted by your decisions around the way that you're going to accomplish things. So, the short answer to your question is, I think it's nonsense, this idea that just go harder, go for it. Now, I say that understanding and being a person myself who I like to get things done.
mhm,
I have big expectations for my time on this planet. I want to do a lot of great things, and I am doing a lot of great things. But when you know that you're doing great things, the goal is to set yourself up for success.
mhm,
And that has to include not just making sure you get the thing done, but thinking about how you're going to get it done. Because I'll tell you, it feels a whole lot better to check off that box after you've taken care of yourself. And if you're
yes.
whole, and if you're in
Mhm,
a position and a state where you can truly enjoy the magnificence of the thing that you've created, so much better
mhm.
than doing it with your tongue hanging out of your mouth and just like all exhausted, your life's all falling apart. Then you got to
Yeah.
go back and you got to go back to the relationships, back to the kids, back to the
Right,
parents,
right.
back to the other jobs, clean up that house. Like you still have to go back to those things. So, how much
Mhm,
better is it to just be more ecological in the way that you approach things? And by ecological, I mean good for you, good for others, and good for the community. And by the community, it can be your family, or it can be your friend circle, or
mhm.
your children, whatever that is.
Thank you for that, because I
You're
hope people
welcome.
heard that, like, that make sure you rest. Make sure you rest and
Yeah,
take care of yourself.
yeah, yeah. And also, honestly, sitting down for 5 minutes, and when people who are on that burnout track, they're like,
Mhm.
I don't have 5 minutes. Guess what? If you sit down for 5 minutes, or for me, if I go for a walk,
Yeah.
the ideas that come to me, the
Mhm.
creativity that comes out of me, the solutions to problems that I've been like, trying to double down on coming
Right.
up with a solution to, they come to me with ease,
Mhm.
right? So understanding that giving yourself space, especially if you're working on something that you've never worked on before, is the best gift that you can give to yourself and to that project.
Yeah, I love that. Well, guys, if you have questions, make sure you drop it in the chat. Like this conversation's getting good. Let's see. Oh, we do have a question from Lynette McCallum. How do you tell the difference between burnout versus tired of being tired? Like, what's the
Oh,
difference?
that is a big question, Lynette. Thank you for that one. I think you know the difference. Again, you have a really busy week. You get to Friday or Saturday, and you're like, you know what? I'm going to sleep in tomorrow. I'm going to, go back and drink that water that I haven't been drinking all week, or take that workout, or whatever that thing is. Um, Being tired of being tired is when you are in a perpetual state of exhaustion, a
Mm,
perpetual state of literally just feeling negative about what's happening in your life. And what that is, everything that happens is really feedback. There's nothing good or bad, it's just feedback.
yeah.
And so if you find yourself in a perpetual state of being tired, or if you're tired of being tired, as you put it, Lynette, then what that means is it's probably time for you to take a step back and to look at what it is that's making you feel or contributing to you feeling the way that you're feeling.
Mm, that's good.
Yeah.
You got me
Do you
thinking
hear,
now,
I'm
like,
sorry, do you hear a lot of noise in the background?
it just sounds like somebody's working, but it's okay. It's not distracting.
Okay, it's this Roomba. I call him Fernando, and he always busts out at the worst time. And he's like right over here, and I'm like, do I go slam the door and like come in the other room because it's
It's
loud?
fine. It's actually a soothing sound,
Okay,
kind of
good.
to me anyway. But
Okay, Fernando. We'll let Fernando come into
Fernando
the
can
space.
stay.
Okay,
So,
sorry.
but no, that's fine. Live. That's the beauty of being live. So what are some proactive steps that people can take to prevent the burnout? Like they don't say they're not they're at the very low end of that spectrum, just starting
Mhm,
out, say whether it is like they've gotten a new assignment or they have gotten, whether it is having to move across the country for a new job or whatever it is, or they're just getting
mhm,
like, maybe there's changes in the family, or
yeah,
even if it's grief.
mhm,
That's I think that's something we don't talk about enough, is how grief can also contribute to being burned out, especially dealing
absolutely.
with all the things that come along with that. So are there any like some proactive steps to avoid burnout? By I know we've talked about a few things, but are there any things that can just really prevent getting to that point?
Absolutely. And that's a great question. We all want to win
Hmm.
at this thing called life. We want to win. And if you agree that our ultimate and bottom line goal is to win, then think about an athlete, for example. Set
Hmm.
yourself up for success. And I think that that's where a lot of us get tripped up. You move across the country, or you experience some kind of a loss
Yeah.
of someone that you care about, or you start a new job or a new project. Taking a moment to really get into the driver's seat of what's happening will help you to avoid getting burnt out. Meaning, for those of you who have children, you feed your child before they leave in the morning, hopefully, some kind of breakfast. You make sure you pack their bag, you make sure that they have water, you make sure that they have sneakers for gym and
Hmm.
all these things. If you approach the things in your life with the idea and with the intention of setting yourself up for success, what you'll find is it'll help you to go through those things in a smoother way. Some of those things are horrible and really hard, like the things that bring grief and that kind of thing. But
Right.
if you know that you're grieving, you know that you need more sleep. You know that you have to make sure you're drinking water, that you're taking vitamins, that you're going for walks, that you're
Hmm.
helping yourself on the same with the same selves that we talked about before,
Hmm.
physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So
Hmm.
if you're getting ready to embark on a new journey or any one of the journeys that I just described, um, taking a moment to think about how do I want to go through this thing? Where do I want to be on the other side of this thing? What do I
Yeah.
want from myself? What do I want for myself?
Mhm,
And what is it going to take? And some things are just challenging. These things
mhm,
happen in the world, and like some life events are just hard,
mhm,
right? And we don't always know or understand what it's going to take. But if you keep at the front of your mind's eye, what will it take for me to set myself up for success in this situation?
mhm,
It will help you to keep yourself at the forefront and
mhm.
to ensure that you get through it in the way that you want to get through it.
So that leads me to my question of self-care. Because you and I were talking before the show a little bit about, and I mentioned that you practice Reiki.
Mhm.
So
I do.
for me, when I was experiencing burnout, grief, and all the things, it was kind of this, let me just try a bunch of different things. So Reiki
Mhm.
was one of the things that I chose to try for self-care. So can you, well, one, maybe explain to people what Reiki is because they may not know, but two,
Mhm.
how it and any other forms of self-care can help to kind of calm that nervous system down and kind of get you back on track.
Yeah, for sure. So first, I want to talk about energy, and
Okay.
everything is energy. And a lot of times people think about energy, it's like, oh, that's woo woo. Maybe, right?
Mhm,
But energy is in every single thing that we do. And, even you and I right now, there is an energy that's being exchanged between you and I and to your listeners
mhm,
that is happening here, whether we're aware of it or not. Energy work is a focused attention on the energy that's being exchanged through that energetic practice. So, Reiki is a practice where the practitioner focuses in on helping you to hone and balance your energy levels within your chakra system.
mhm.
And the chakra system is this whole thing, and I don't know if you want me to go into that, but it's balancing your energy through, like, there are 8 major chakra systems. The first is, belonging. The second is sensuality, sexuality, creativity. It's kind of the energy of creation, of creating. The third is power in relationships. It's in your solar plexus. It's like how we show up in relationships, how
Mhm,
empowered we feel. The fourth is your heart chakra, where a lot of us get caught up.
mhm.
Um, the fifth is the other one where people get caught up, which is right in the throat area, right? And like if you find yourself kind of like choking back your words, or if you
Mhm,
feel that kind of like lump in your throat, or if you find yourself not speaking fully
mhm,
with the full, energy of who you are, sometimes that's because there's some blockage, or there's a concern about being able to fully express yourself,
mhm. Yeah.
right? It's about expression and voice. And then your sixth chakra is between your forehead,
Mhm,
between your eyebrows, I'm sorry. And that is your ability to see. So sometimes and I find myself with this a lot, where if you have those little lines, sometimes it's because
mhm.
it's like, I don't like what I'm seeing. I don't understand what I'm seeing, right? But it's like what you see. And then your seventh chakra is where that soft spot is at the top of if you've ever touched the top of a baby's head, where
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
soft spot.
Okay.
And your seventh chakra is the place where your spiritual self meets the physical manifestation of your being. So it's kind of where the universe has manifested Shamika Rhymes, or Lisan Basquiat. And then
Mhm,
the eighth chakra is known as kind of our higher self, and it's about, a foot above our seventh chakra. And that is the space where your spiritual being becomes manifested from the universe. And so um, Reiki is a way of having a practitioner help you to balance your chakra system, and also
mhm,
to balance your energy. There are a lot of different energetic practices, many different ones, and they are all around helping a person to balance and center their energy so that they can show up more whole, feeling whole, and complete and more
Mhm.
grounded.
Okay.
Meditation is another
Mhm.
way of really
Mhm.
just it's a very personal energetic practice that anyone can do at any time. And
Mhm.
it's really just sitting and feeling into your energy and releasing all the thoughts and the busyness so that you can really experience and feel and center and ground your energy.
Okay.
I think I answered way more than you asked,
No, no,
but
no, that's great. That's great because I think it helps for people to understand exactly what it is. And you guys, again, don't forget to drop your questions in the chat. We've got about 14 minutes or so. So I want to make sure we get your questions answered. Let's see here because I totally, went off book as usual.
I love
um,
it. The best things happen when you go off book.
right? So for those that are, I think we've kind of touched on this, but just let's just recap it.
Mhm.
That are already in, say, they are at the point of severe burnout. How can they start to pull themselves out of it? And at one point, because would they find someone that's like you, a coach that can help them through it, or would you suggest reaching out way sooner before it gets to that point?
I suggest reaching out way sooner because I think getting help, it does not always have to be the thing that you do when you're laying flat on your back. I think that if you integrate self-care
Hmm.
and more mindful living into your lifestyle, it helps you to stay away from the doctor the same way that brushing your teeth helps you to stay away from having cavities. You still go to the dentist so they can check things out and make sure you're okay, but the results that you experience while you're there are so much better. So I think that having a team of people, ensuring that in your community, in your life, that you have a support system for whatever it is that you're up to is a great way to help yourself. Um, Really paying attention to where you're putting your energy is another way of ensuring. I think I saw a question come across about someone saying, well, they're retired. Why do they still feel burnt out?
Yeah.
Sometimes asking yourself that question, like, what is it that's going on that has you feeling the way that you're feeling? What
Hmm.
is it that needs to change? What do you need to get rid of? What do you need to do more of and less of? What should you stop doing and what should you start doing? I think that if you find yourself at a place where you are withdrawing and where those burnout behaviors are impacting the people around you and your world, that is a time for you to get yourself to whatever resource you believe is going to help you. Sometimes if those symptoms are coming out and, physically, like you
Hmm.
described, then get yourself to a medical professional and get that handled while also handling the things that are creating that
Hmm.
situation. If it's emotional and you find yourself where you are suddenly not having great relationships or having a problem setting boundaries or any of that, then it's time to get yourself into some kind of a program, a workshop.
Hmm.
If I can plug it, I'm doing an Avoiding
Yeah.
Burnout workshop in September. Go to the Shaping Freedom website and you'll get information about that. Get yourself into some kind of a support system
Hmm.
to help you. And I also want to add here that we talk about burnout, and sometimes it's seen as kind of like this catchy thing, this
Hmm.
kind of thing, right? That people are going through. But the truth of the matter is that when you look back, some of us can look back on our lives at maybe a childhood situation
Hmm.
that wasn't ideal for us, or some of our childhood traumas, or some of the ways that we were programmed. Very often, if you really look back at those situations,
Hmm.
what you'll find is that we were raised by people who were themselves burnt out,
Oh, that's good.
right?
Yeah.
So if you find yourself today, sometimes you're really mad at that person. You're like, that person did blah, blah, blah. And, if you kind of peel back,
Hmm.
you find that those people were themselves struggling. And
Hmm.
especially depending on what age you are, right? There was a time where as a kid, my parents were divorced, my mother was mentally ill. There were there were all kind of things that were going on. And at the time, and I'm also first generation. My father was
Hmm.
Haitian, my mother was Puerto Rican. There it was not the norm to
Mhm.
say, oh, there's a divorce going on, or,
Right.
their mom is mentally ill, or this thing is going on, or, my father was struggling as a first generation immigrant, as an immigrant, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
and we were first generation children. There was no place. And my parents were amazing people. They
Mhm.
were human, right?
Yeah.
And there really was no place to consider what was happening on the periphery of our lives. So sometimes where I know better now, but back then where I'd be like, my father was mad all the time, blah, blah, blah. When I
Yeah.
look back on it, he was stressed out. He was
Mhm.
burned. He was the sole caretaker on a daily basis for 3 children as a person who had migrated to this country, who
Mhm.
was himself acclimating to a brand new culture, a brand new environment, a brand new role while being a Black man within corporate America, while dot, 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 whatever the things are, all the
Right.
comments behind that. So I think that understanding that burnout is not just about, "Oh my gosh, I'm really tired now."
Right.
It's how is the world around me being
Mhm.
impacted by my decisions that have led me down this road of burnout? Are you shorter with your children? Do you not have the patience to
Mhm.
really hear your kids out or to understand what's going on with them? Are you and your partner fighting all the time? Do you dread when your parents are calling you because you don't have time to
Mhm.
talk to them? Whatever those things are. Are you mad at your dog because they have to go out? Like, whatever those things are that
Right.
happen, it's
Uh-huh.
really understanding that this is something that is broader and bigger than just you.
Mhm. Thank you for that, because I never thought about
You're
that.
welcome.
That kinda opens up a whole other perspective that I've never thought about. Everyone is quick
Yes.
to be like, "My parents this," and not thinking about, "Well, maybe they were stressed out."
Exactly, and if you're stressed out and you're burnt out today and
Yeah.
you're struggling with it, think about how that could be
Mhm.
impacting your children because that's what familial legacy is about.
Mhm.
That's what a healthy family legacy is about. It's not just about, financial generational wealth. It's also how abundant are we in our ability to
Mhm.
check our own experience, heal what needs to be healed, bring forward the great things, and leave some other things behind so that our children don't have to experience what life is like and be raised within the context of what life is like when the people who are taking care of you are
Mhm.
miserable, burnt out, tired, and don't take the time to care for
Mhm.
themselves or model for you what self care looks like.
Wow, yeah. So you guys, we got a few more minutes left. Make sure you drop your questions in the chat. So, how can our audience connect with you? I mean, you mentioned it before, but just again, I'll let you go ahead and plug that workshop
Thank
because I
you.
think people would love to know more about that. Um,
Yeah,
how can they
we're
connect with you?
calling it the name of the workshop is Nurturing Your Flame, Avoiding Burnout. And what that means is that we as a human being, you're a flame, right?
Mhm.
Keep that flame lit because
Mhm.
when your flame is lit and you're operating as this creative, wonderful being that you are, everything around you
Yeah.
shines. So
Mhm.
that's the converse of what I just said, right?
Right.
Because when you are doing well, everybody around you does better too.
Mhm.
So the workshop is avoiding burnout. We'll talk about that. We'll go through the 12 stages of burnout. We'll talk
Mhm.
about ways that you can set boundaries, be clear about your values, and really come up with and create a conscious strategy for your life. I call myself a life strategist, but I got news for you. It's a secret. We're all a life
Yeah.
strategist. We all have a strategy to get us to the results that we have.
Mhm.
Being conscious of the power in that is what I help people to do, to get into the driver's seat and figure out what is your strategy going to be. So
Mhm.
we'll go through those things. We'll also talk about ways to mitigate stress when you find yourself in that place where you're a little bit too far down that road.
Mhm.
The way to stay in contact with me, and I'd love it if you would, is to follow me on all the platforms. So follow Shaping Freedom on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or go to the shapingfreedom.com website
Mhm.
where you'll find information about all of our events that are coming up. We have the Avoiding Burnout is on September 27th. That's online. And then there's a Shape Your Foundation, which is a 3-day program
Mhm.
happening in Carlsbad, California, on October 11th. And if I'm wrong, please forgive me. On the weekend of October 11th. And
Okay.
that is where we're going to take a deep, deep dive into what is the strategy for your life and
Mhm.
how do we ensure that you have a strategy that's going to get you the results that you really want to have. It's a beautiful program. It's 3 days. It's in person, and we kind of get into it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm curious. Can you give us like some of those stages? You've mentioned there's 12. Can you give us some of those
Mhm.
stages of burnout?
Sure. The first one is the one that we talked about. It's kind of being ambitious. You
Mhm.
have some ambition to learn something new, whether it's, a new parenting thing or uh, a new job, a new project, or whatever. The second stage is when you decide that you're just going to work harder. You're
Mhm.
going to, barrel forward. You're just going to make this thing happen. Sometimes that's a wonderful thing and it's exactly what's
Right.
needed. The third is neglecting yourself when you get to the
Mhm.
point where you're like, ah, I'm just going to keep working harder,
Mhm.
forget my nails, whatever the thing
Yeah.
is. The fourth is when you start to displace problems, and that's kind of when, like we were talking earlier,
Mhm.
where maybe you're breaking out and you're like, I'm really upset about, I don't know, this thing on my face, when actually um it's not attributed to that. I'm not explaining that one correctly, but it's really like when you have a problem and the
Mhm.
problem is here, but you're pulling the Jedi mind trick and you're blaming it
Gotcha.
on something else, right?
Gotcha.
When you come in and you're like, "You kids are always doing blah blah blah." It's not the kids, it's you.
Mhm.
You haven't
Right.
figured things out, right? The fourth one is when you revise your values, and that's really kind of the turning point. When
Mhm.
you have a value of, I don't know, spirituality, abundance, your lifestyle, whatever those values are. And when, because you're in this situation, you start to decide that those things aren't as important, it's kind of another level, a deeper level of neglecting yourself.
Mhm.
When you're in denial, which
Okay.
is kind of similar to the
Mhm.
displacing of problems,
Yeah.
where it's like, there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing. I only need 2 hours of sleep a night. I
Mhm.
could be on, conference calls with the flu. There's nothing wrong with it. That's when you're denying things.
Mhm.
Withdrawal is when you start to withdraw. And that is when it starts to get really serious, where you're like, no, I am just head down, focused. Your face is all squinched up. All your energy is kind of like totally focused on this one thing. And you've withdrawn yourself from the other parts of your life. What it looks like is when you're like sitting in your office until 12 o'clock at night while your
Mhm.
family is living their life outside and you're
Right.
withdrawing, having a significant impact on others. And that's the one that we talked about
Mhm.
before, where your behaviors and all these things that we just talked about result in you having a significant negative impact on others. And then the last one is when you're really in despair, where
Mhm.
you're fully depressed, you're fully, in despair and don't know how to kind of get out of it. And that's the point where it's like, okay, now you're with a professional and you
Mhm.
need to find a way to work with that professional to help you to get out of it. I encourage you at
Yeah.
any one of these steps. It's not hard work. Uncertainty is a part of our experience on this planet. I'm not
Mhm.
suggesting that, you just sit around eating bonbons and don't worry about life. That's not the reality. But paying attention to and knowing the trajectory that you're on in the different areas of your life is the way for you to ensure that you don't wind up at that last rung of
Mhm.
whatever path. Sometimes we're on a path to other things, that
Right.
are in parallel with burnout. So it really is about being more conscious and mindful about the road that you're on and
Mhm.
ensuring that, as I said before, that you're setting yourself up for success. If you know yourself, which I do,
Mhm.
and I know that I can be, you know, traveling every single week, bouncing from time zone to time zone.
Mhm.
I also know that I have to be hydrated if I'm on a plane. Got to
Right.
pay attention to those things and take what you know and
Mhm.
integrate that into this process. So you could still accomplish, but accomplish it in a way where you're not, where the cost doesn't outweigh the benefit.
I want to thank you. I do have one more question because I ask everybody this question that comes
Okay.
on. What feeds your soul?
Ah, okay, I'm gonna give you the corny, what feeds my soul, which is the obvious, what feeds my soul, which is this having these conversations about the way we're living on
Hmm.
this planet. It truly feeds my soul. What also feeds my soul is my community, my community. So my
Hmm.
community is comprised of both my family
Uh-huh.
and those folks that I have created
Hmm.
family with,
Hmm.
my friends, my tribe. Um, that brings me incredible joy and feeds my soul.
Hmm.
What also feeds my soul is prayer and journaling
Hmm.
and some of these things that are really aspects of self care and are also opportunities for me to tap in to myself and to tap
Hmm.
into God
Yeah,
and to see where I am.
I
And
love
music.
I love
I guess I
that.
got a lot of soul feeding happening, but and music for
Yeah,
sure.
I thought you
Yeah.
were going to say art. Hmm.
I mean, I think that life is art, and art does feed my soul as well. You know, I think
Yeah.
that it really boils down to whatever it is, there's this feeling
Hmm.
that we all have, and we know what that feeling is, and we know the things that bring that feeling. This is the positive, right?
Hmm.
Beautiful art, listening to an amazing song,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
taking a beautiful walk and looking at nature, watching 2 dogs play, watching children. For me,
Hmm.
what feeds my soul is whatever activates that feeling. That's hard to describe. I don't even know what
Yeah.
the word for it is, but it's that feeling in your soul where you're like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, yes,
Mhm.
yeah."
I love that. And you want to tell everybody why I said art? As we're ending that way. So they're going to
Okay,
think
that's
I'm
okay.
crazy.
Yeah, so my brother Jean-Michel Basquiat is um, even 30 something years after his passing, one of the most profound artists ever, and profound in certainly in the practice of visual art, but also in his ability to see the world and to speak on it, his ability to create, going back to that second chakra
Yeah.
thing that we talked about
Yeah.
earlier. He was a visual artist. He also produced one of the top 100 hip hop songs of all time. He was also in a film. He did all the things that he felt led to do.
Mhm.
And so everything about him and his life was and is art because he's very much alive still.
Yeah.
My sister Janine and I manage his estate
Mhm.
after our father passed away in 2013, and he had managed Jean-Michel's estate um, from his passing in 1988 until my father passed away in 2013. And Janine and I have currently managed our brother's estate.
Mhm.
And so art is very much a part of my life, always has been. As a kid
Yeah.
growing up in Brooklyn, we
Mhm.
were in the museums all the time and all that great stuff. And I think life is art. I do. We're creating every day. And I think
Yeah.
it's important that we recognize
Mhm.
that we are creating, that we see the power in that and that
Mhm.
we move accordingly.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for teaching us all about burnout, how to prevent it, and how to work towards recovering from it. You'll have to definitely come back and join me
I
again
would
on
love to.
Soulibration.
I
Yeah.
would love to. This was wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. So for more information, everybody, on how to reduce stress and prevent burnout, head over to blackdoctor.org. And as for me, I'll see you guys next Wednesday for a celebration. We'll be taking a look at weight loss measures and the connection between gut health and losing that weight. Because I don't know about y'all, but sometimes you're like, why can't I get this 10 pounds off? But it might be because of your gut health. So we're going to talk about it next week. So, and if you have any topics you want to talk about, let me know. But have a soul filled rest of the week, and I'll see you next week.